Today I'm going to show you how to do the Tramme needlepoint embroidery technique. Hi everyone, Sarah from Homfray Embroidery. We're going to have another look at this piece here. So we had a little look at this last year. You can check this video out. I'll put a link up at the end of this one that you're watching now. You can go and see all about that. And we had a little look at what this technique was, a little bit of history about it, and how I got this, how I came to have this piece. So do go and check that one out if you're interested in this. But today I thought we'll have a little bit closer look at it, and we'll actually do some stitching on it, and I'll show you the actual technique in action. So a little reminder about this project is this is actually a second hand piece. It has been started already. The top part has already been stitched and the bottom it's very long. It's beautiful, really, really beautiful. So the rest of it hasn't. So if you bought a new kit, you can buy these kits new. Obviously you won't have it started, but this part has already got some stitches in. This is the Tramme bit, stitches that go underneath the actual stitching. You stitch over the top of them and it raises them up a bit and makes a little bit of a padded technique. So they come with this part already pre-stitched for you, and then you basically stitch by numbers, well, stitch by colours. So then you stitch over the top. So I'll have a closer look at that in a minute. So I'm going to have a little go a bit in the middle. So I need to get it back on a frame. I'm not going to work it in my hand. You can work it in your hand, but strange things happen with a tension and it's better to have it on a frame. So I'm going to put it back on a frame. It came with a frame actually with it, but they have done something here. I'll just show you to this camera. They have either stitched right to the top, or it was on this frame and they've cut it off right by the stitching, so it stitches right to the edge of the fabric, which is a bit of a problem. So if you did buy a new piece or any piece of canvas that you want to work, any pattern, any kit that you've got, allow yourself a bit of fabric to actually put it on a frame. The end has got a bit there, so it's got a good few inches at the bottom, so don't stitch all the way up to the end. Allow yourself a little bit that you can actually get it on the frame. So I'm going to have to tackle that one, wing that one a little bit and get it on the frame, but I'll show you how I'm going to do that. So I'm going to put it on the frame, and then we're going to have a look at the back, because you can tell a lot by the back when it's been stitched how they've actually stitched it. So I need to try and stitch it in the same way. If you've got a new one, you can follow the instructions. So we're going to have a look at the back of the piece and look at the stitches, and we can tell quite a lot about how it's been stitched by doing that. So I can do it in the same way, and then we'll do a little bit of the stitching. So this is the frame that I'm going to put it on. So this is a roller bar frame. So these actually go round. Might squeak a bit. Do. So this enables me to roll my embroidery around each frame, and I can work on a big long piece and I can just roll it to the section I want and stitch the section I want. So that's really good. And then you can tighten these up so it stays nice and firm when you stitch on it. So we do have a video on how to frame up on one of these frames. It's a very old video. It's literally one of the first videos we did up in the loft in our old house. So it's not our greatest, it's not our finest moment, but the principle is still the same, that the way you frame up a frame hasn't changed. So please be kind to me. We've learned a lot since then. It's a long time ago now, but it is quite comprehensive video on how to do this. So I'm not going to go into a lot of depth on how to do a frame like this in this video. Do go and check that one out. I'll put that one up at the end as well. So the principle is to get it on the frame. I want to get it in the middle. I want it to be as square as possible, so you can see the centre of this has been marked. So I'll find the centre of this one as well. I'll match the two up. I'll stitch them together. I'll do the same at the other end, and then I can roll it around the frame. Now I do have to deal with this, as I mentioned previously. So what I'm going to do, fudge it a little bit. Got some of this tape. This is herringbone tape. This is brilliant for framing up on these frames. It's really nice and strong. This goes down the side, and we're going to attach that around here so we can pull it that way and that way. But I'm going to put a piece on the top as well, because I don't want to sew that directly onto here. I think this will damage the stitches and it'll start to pull the stitches out. This is quite fragile. I did think about taking an inch out, but I thought I'll just damage the fabric and it's going to take me a long time. So I thought I'm just going to stitch this on top of here like that, about half of it on, half of it off, and then I'll sew this part to the frame, and this bit will be attached to the embroidery, and once it's wrapped around the frame this will be a lot more stable. So that's what I'm going to do. This end and the other end I will just frame in the normal way. So I'm going to cut this to exactly the right length. And then I'm just going to pin this in place. So about half of it on and half of it off, so that bit goes on the frame. I've just pinned that on and I'm going to sew it on with a sew all buttonhole thread, really, really strong thread. Everything at this point is about it not coming off and being really strong, so I'm just going to sew this on. Big needle, there's quite a lot to go through here. So I'll just get that started so you can see what I'm doing. Let's put a knot in the end. This will come off again at the end, so it doesn't need to look pretty. Just going to go round and round like that. It's big stitches. I'm going to go through all that stitching. I'm going to pull this quite tight. This is really strong, so when I pull on this, nothing's going to move. So I'm just going to do that all the way to the bottom. So when you get to the end, just go over a couple of times. Say, just make this really super strong. Like so. Now I've got something nice and firm. It's not very straight. Doesn't have to look beautiful. So now I'm going to attach that to that. So I've got the middle of this one. I'm just going to find the middle of this one quickly and put a pin in that. And then I'm going to attach them back to back. So I'm going to use the same thread for that. Just start that inside, pin out. So again, just over and over really tightly. Round and round. Tight as you can. This will make it really secure. And you can leave this on the frame for as long as you want to. Then you've not got pins and things that will go rusty. It's so nice and tightly to your frame. Just like to take this opportunity to thank all of those who've clicked the super thanks button. It looks like this over here. Show your appreciation for the videos and that you're enjoying them. Your names are scrolling across the screen now, and of course, as always, thank you to our patrons and our channel members as well for your continued support. More content coming for you very soon. I hope you're enjoying the extra content that's up there for you. If you want to join one of those, you can check out the description below the video. There's details in how to do that there. I'm going to do the other end in the same way. I don't need to put the tape on this one because there's no stitching in it. I can just fold that over, probably about 1/2 inch, 1 centimetre, just to give myself a nice firm piece of fabric to stitch into. Again, back to back, I've marked the centres. I'm going to stitch in exactly the same way, just round and round, really, really securely, all the way along the whole length of the fabric. So I have attached both ends onto my frame, and what happens now is it looks like this. So we have to roll all that around the roller. So all you do is just twist them outwards. Do that under this camera here. So twist it around that way, like so, and start to roll it. So you need to roll it to the part that you want to actually stitch on, obviously. Get it under control. So I'm going to work on this part here. So I'm going to roll the bottom end in, so I've just got that section in the middle, and then we can put some tape down the sides and tighten it that way and work on that. So I'm just going to roll that now. I'm going to tighten my wing nut so I get my frame all really nice and tight. Okay, so I've got it as tight as I can. There's more stitching at the edge of this side than this side. So this side is going to be a bit floppy because it's not so much be wrapped around the frame, but don't worry about that. We can stretch this out a little bit. Just a word on what you might want to do with your canvas if you make it into a cushion or a hanging or something like that. Something where it's going to be sort of loose when it's finished. You don't need your frame mega tight. If you were going to do it on a chair or a footstool or something, then you might want to get it a little bit tighter, because when you take it off the frame it will relax a little bit. If you've done it really tight, it will all bunch up a little bit. So it doesn't have to be mega tight if we're going to make it into a hanging, which I am for this one. So we're going to have a little look at this flower. We're going to do a little bit of stitching on this flower and then a little bit of the background. So I'm just going to flip this over and we'll have a quick talk about the stitches on the backs, because we can work out what they've used from what it looks like on the back. Okay, so it's got a couple of threads that they've been using on the back, so I should take those through to the front, but I just wanted to show you what was happening on the back because this is a really interesting pattern here. So this is done in basket weave stitch. Now it looks the same as some other stitches on the front, but it's different on the back, and you can see it's been worked in these diagonals here. So that's one way I can tell it's basket weave because they've done the diagonals, but the other way is it actually looks like a basket on the back. So I did some samples here. And you can see here, I've used a variegated thread, and you can see when I've done basket weave how the colours go diagonally, because we've just talked about that diagonal stitch. And this stitch covers the canvas really well, working it in this way. Just done a couple here, so this is a tent stitch and this is a half cross stitch. They look the same on the front, but they look different on the back. I'll just flip this over. So you can see my half cross stitch barely covers the back, so it doesn't cover the canvas really well. The tent stitch covers it better, but it gives me these horizontal lines, and then the basket weave has got this basket type pattern in the back. So I know when I look at mine and I see this basket pattern that they've done it in a basket weave stitch. If you're interested in the difference between tent stitch, half cross stitch and basket weave, I've got a very detailed video on that. Again, it is an older one. Be kind to me. I'll put that up in the corner actually. You can have a look at that one here if you want to know what the difference is and when you might use which one. So I know that my background has been done in basket weave, so we will continue to do that. I just want to mention this here. Now there's a lot of jumping around of colours here, so you can do it one of two ways. So you can either do all one colour in one go, or you can keep lots of needles on the go and move back and forth. Whichever way you do is fine, but just be aware of something here. So you don't want really long stitches on the back. Don't start a pale bit up here, jump your thread down here and continue it down here, because you'll get a big long thread across the back, and if it comes undone on the back it can come undone on the front. So you want to keep your stitches nice and close together. You also don't want to end up with lots of knots and lots of bulk on the back as well. I just want to show you another piece that I've got here. So this is another piece that appeared in that first Tramme video. If you want to see what's on the front, you'll need to go and check that one out because there's quite a cute picture on the front. But I just wanted to show you this as an example of what not to do. So you can see lots of big knots on the back where they've started and they finished these threads. So they've changed colours. There's some long stitches here as well, going right across the back. It's bulky. These are going to break, its stitches are going to come out in the front, you're going to make it something that's got these big lumps on the back. So what we want to do is to avoid that. So you can use either method. You can either change the thread as you go and have lots of needles on the go, or you can work all one colour, finish that and then come back and do another colour. But whichever method you use, you don't want to do this here. Off again. So what I need to do is to tighten the frame this way as well. This is a bit floppy, it's going to be a bit awkward to stitch on with my tension. So I'm going to put some little strips of a herringbone tape down the sides, the same way as I did for across that top piece there. I'm going to attach that to the canvas, and then the herringbone tape will go with some string around the frame, and I can pull it nice and tight that way. So I'm just going to make sure I pin this so it's just off the stitching. I want to be able to stitch down here. So there's not a lot to play with on this side. There's a little bit more on this side to play with. So again, if you're making your own, just allow fabric around the edge to finish things and to frame things up. It's all very well going to the edge, and doesn't the embroidery look lovely? But it's very hard to work, so I haven't got much to work with. So I'm just going to sew right down there, right up to the edge of those stitches, so that I can finish stitching this, and then I'll put some string in and pull it tight. Don't forget there are instructions on how to do that on that video on framing up, so I'm not going to show you now, so I'll get that done and then we'll come back and have a look when I've finished. Okay, so we're all officially framed up. So my tape's down the side there. I put string around the bars. It just goes through the tape. It doesn't go through this canvas as well. You pull on the tape and this is attached to the canvas. So that's nice and tight. We can just roll it that way. Nice tight surface to work on, so I know my tension is going to be quite good. Seems like a lot of effort to do that. It's taken me a bit of a time to do it, but it's worth it, especially for a piece that's going to take a long time to stitch. It's worth doing that preparation. You will benefit at the end, promise you the benefit will be at the end, so you don't have to start stretching it because it's all out of shape. Right, let's do some stitching. So I put my frame in 2 versatile table clamps. These table clamps will take roller bar frames, but it is quite a heavy frame, so I have got 2 now. I normally have 2 to keep it centered to the camera, but I think you do need 2 because this is quite heavy. Now it's quite substantial. You can sit and do this in your hand. You don't need to have it in a frame if you don't want to. So I'm going to look at the colours now. So these colours come with the kit. So if you purchase a Tramme kit, it will have the same colours that they have done the Tramme stitches in. If you're making up your own Tramme kit, you want to do this technique and you're doing it in your own design, check out the details in that other video on how to do that, because you will need to choose the colours yourself. But if you buy a kit, it comes with these stitches already in. So these are the Tramme stitches, they're the stitches in between the stitches that you stitch over. So we're going to stitch over all of these. So these come already in the canvas, and we're going to put these stitches in over the top. So you get a big bunch of colours. So you have to match the colours to the colours that are already in the canvas. So there's no pattern to follow, which is really great about these things. If you go a bit cross-eyed following patterns, this is really good. But you do have to match up the right colour, and some of them are quite close. So those two are quite close. So make sure you're doing it in good light so you can see the colours clearly, because nothing more annoying than putting the wrong colour in over the top. So I'm going to start with this one because this one is already in. They've actually stitched some of this dark colour here. So remember I said you can jump around if you want. So you can either do the same colour and jump around and put all that colour in, or you can get lots of needles on and go and keep swapping. So I'm going to use the colour that they've already got in there. So this is the last stitch here, and the next stitch is here. So you've got to look for where that colour is, and there's a stitch over every single hole. So you do your stitch from hole to hole, from there to there, and then the colour you need will be in between those two holes. Make sure I'm going in the same direction. So you have to find the one that you want. So the next one I think is there. So I'm going to come up there, I'm going to go across the hole here, and then the thread colour I'm using is underneath. So each stitch is marked, every single stitch will have a colour in it. If it hasn't got one in, it's a background colour. So I'm going to do the 10th stitch version, which leaves me a long stitch on the back. That covers the canvas better. So you have to look and see which colours it is. So there's another one there. So you do have to have some good light for this, because it doesn't, world's not going to end if you get the wrong colour. But you might find that if you do loads of it in the wrong colour, you run out of thread. Not pulling too tightly on my stitches. If you put lots of these stitches in, it's really dense and it's all going to come up. So there's a couple more there. So I'm doing the ones that are nearest to where I'm working. I'm not jumping up here and coming down, so that I don't get loads of travel on the back with my thread. I don't get all those nasty knots and those big lumpy bits underneath that we looked at on that other piece. I'm also here doing something that if you buy a kit you won't have to do, is I'm stitching something somebody else has stitched, so our tensions are probably going to be different. So I'm just being a bit wary of that. I have quite a tight tension when I stitch, so I'm just going to try and loosen it off and make it match the tension that's already in, otherwise it's going to be obvious that I've worked it. Now there's another stitch in this colour over here, it's just a single one. I've only jumped from here to here. That's a very short stitch on the back, that's fine. I wouldn't go from here to up here. You can finish your thread off, start a new thread for over there. There's that stitch is there. I'll show you how to start a thread when we start a new colour. It's all up there like that. So don't worry too much about following a system of, am I doing 10th stitch, am I doing half cross stitch, because you do jump around, you'll lose that pattern. So don't worry too much about that, just don't make big leaps, do your stitches close together. And down there, and I'm going to just double check now there isn't any more in this colour before I finish it off. I think these ones down there are the next colour, they are. So I finished that thread, so I can do one of two things now. I can either turn my frame over, finish it on the back, or I can just park it to the side, and then when I've got a few threads on the back, on the front to finish off on the back, I can turn it over and do it then. So I'm going to do that as I've just set it all up in the frame for the camera. So I'm just going to park that thread over to the side, leave it on the top. Don't leave it hanging on the bottom, because when you start another stitch it gets all tangled up and you'll be a big mess. So just park anything you're not using on the top out of the way, and we can deal with it later. So I pulled my next colour out. Now there's quite long lengths in this. Anybody who watches my videos will know that that's terrible length. I think that's terrible length. I would not use that length. So what I'm going to do, I pulled one out. It's like it's well over a metre. I'm going to chop it in half. I think that's too long. This is wool. It will wear every time it goes through the fabric, and you'll end up with scraggy ends and it'll break and you'll have to fix it and to start a new one anyway, so you might as well start with the right length. So I've cut it in half and I've got about that long. I'm happy with that length. Just because it comes in 1.5 meters doesn't mean to use it in 1.5 meters. Right, I'm going to do a little bit of stitching here. So I'm just going to show you how to start a thread. Now I've put a knot in the end. That knot will come off. That is a waste knot. It will be wasted. It will come off. So remember, we don't want those nasty knots on the back. So I'm just going to park it outside my shape here, and I'm going to go along under the back, and I'm going to do some stitching as I have just done over the right colour. Now what will happen on the back, come out opposite where I'm working, is we will cover that thread on the back with these stitches. That will get caught in, and I will turn that over and show you that. So we're kind of stitching it in as we do our stitching, so it will be discreet. We won't end up with big knots on the back. And then we can just cut off that excess. It'll be nice and neat and tidy, nice and flat on the back. So the same colour is here. So just check that you've got the right colour in. It's easy when you get in the rhythm to forget and just go over everything. You can get sort of into a stitch. So you can see I'm doing the 10th stitch now. I come up ahead of myself and I go back on myself, and that goes around the canvas, gives me a long stitch on the back, which covers the canvas really well, and you won't see any canvas through between the stitches. So if you do get a chance to be sort of a bit rhythmic about it. I think I might have missed a dark stitch. We'll talk about missing stitches in a minute. So that is a dark stitch there. There's 2 stitches that I've missed, so that's fine. Come back and sort that out. So I'm going to come back over this one here. So keep going as long as you can with that same colour, so you don't have to start and stop. A couple more before it changes colour. So I've got a light one in there, single stitch in there, so it's quite a lot of changing of threads in this technique. So I'm just going to see, can I go anywhere else? I think, let's check that's the same colour. I think it is. You could sort your threads out into the different colours, and you could just wind them into little balls so that you can clearly see the different colours. I think we're carrying on with that one there. I'm going to go to the bottom of this section. So just come along here. I'm going to go up here, and I've noticed there's actually another dark one in here. So I've got 1, 2, 3 of the dark stitches that I haven't put in. So you have to keep your wits about you. Make sure that you've put all the stitches in. So I'm just going to carry on as if I've done those, and it'll leave a gap and I'll know where they are. So let's just carry on with this colour. Up here, one in there. Remember, you're going large hole to large hole. This is a special canvas called a Penelope canvas that separates out. You can see here there's a little holes in between, so the little holes are where the Tramme stitches are, and you're going big hole to big hole, not in those little holes on this occasion. So I finished here on this stitch here, and there's a bit more of this down here, so I can travel from here to here. That's only that distance. I'm happy to do that distance. I wouldn't go from there down to the bottom and work up. Be a bit methodical about how you work around it. If you're not sure, finish it off and start a new stitch. So I'm going to turn it over now, and I'll show you how to finish that thread, and we'll check that this one has been caught in. So here's the one I just finished stitching with. So I'm going to take that one to the top and carry on with that. So I'll leave that one in. But here is the one with my knot on my end. So my knot is here, it came under here. There's the edge of the stitch, and it goes right up to here, and it's been stitched over. So you only need to go over a couple of times to make sure that is held in, and you can cut the knot off on the front and it's all nice and neat and tidy. I pull that knot out so you can see it's all nice and flat on the back, no lumps and bumps and knots and bits hanging out all over the place. It's really worth finishing it off properly. Right, and this one here is the dark red one. Now I was going to finish this off, but I found a few missing ones, so I'm going to leave that in. So what I need to do is find where my missing stitches are. I can mark it with a needle on the front, mark where it is, and I can thread up my thread that I was going to finish off, but I haven't. So it's worth just hanging on to those threads. It's worth just parking them at the side just in case you've got to bring it back. And then I want to get from here to here. Now I can start a new thread if I want, or I can just slide it underneath these stitches and go right back to where I want it to be. Slide it under there, come out on the top and put my extra stitches in. So again, just nice smooth finish. Don't jump straight from there into there. You get that long stitch on the thread that can come break and come undone on the front as well. So you can just slide your stitches, your thread to where you want to use it if you want to add those extra stitches in. So those are my 3 missing stitches. My thread is now in the right place on the back because I've just threaded it underneath, and I can put those extra stitches in. It's probably worth doing them as you come across them because otherwise you forget where they are. So it's worth just stopping and putting those ones in. There we go. That's better. And then again I can just park that on the top just in case I need it again. So I just want to show you how to do a bit of this basket weave and how to start a thread for that. And I'm going to show you here. So I did just unpick one stitch just to see how they'd done it. And they've done it a bit strangely. They've come up out of the thread and come down into the canvas. I would normally go the other way. I'd come up in the canvas and down in the hole with the thread in it. It just pushes all the threads down the hole. If you bring your needle up, it comes through the stitch and it can split it. So I'm going to do it the other way, and I'm going to do a little bit and see what it looks like. But we're now working in diagonal, so I'm not going to put my knot over here that way. I want to cover that on the back. So if I put it in the direction I'm going, so I'll put my knot down there and I'm going to come up here. I'll put that stitch back in. So I'll do a little bit so you can, as that one goes from there to there. Just get going so you can see what I'm doing. So I'm going to come up in the canvas and down in the hole with the thread already in it. And what you do with the basket is if you miss one out, so we're going to do it kind of filling in every other one. That's the end of that one. So then I jump down to here, up in the canvas, down in that hole with the stitch in it. I'm not pulling it too tight because I'm just trying to match the tension that's already in there. So nice even tension. And the idea of the basket weave for the background is that it distorts the canvas the least of all of those 3 stitches. So if we do tent stitch, you can do lots of tent stitch, it can warp the canvas that way a little bit. The idea of doing it this way is that it reduces that. This one is a little bit warped, but it's been stitched heavily at the top, so I'm hoping I want to stitch the rest of it. It'll even out. So now I've got to my knot. I'm happy that that's covered on the back. Just check it has if you're not sure before you cut your knot off. Cut my waist knot off, waist knot. And that's a nice, neat, even start to your thread. And then you can just carry on down. So every other one into that hole. I just find that's a better way of doing it, a neater way to stitch rather than coming up here, which is what they have done on that stitch. Come up there and down there, and that's all there is to it. So the background's nice and simple. Don't have to think about colour changes. Just concentrate on that nice even tension throughout. So I think I've gone over all the basics you need to do this Tramme technique, whether it's one that you found secondhand to finish or whether it's a new one you want to do. Don't forget to check out that other video with lots more information on this technique. Just want to mention quickly before I go about the middle here. So there's lots of changes of colour in the middle here. So I would suggest you do the middle first. It's easy to jump in with the bits where there's lots of stitches, but you've stitched all around here and then you've got to start and finish your threads for this, and that can be a bit awkward. So I suggest doing these fairly soon actually, so you can get your knot in there, you can bring a stitch and then you can stitch over the top of it, so you're not leaving that to the end, because then it's tricky to start and finish your stitches. You can leave a very long thread to start with a knot on, and then if you can't cover it on the back, you can snip the knot off, thread it in your needle and just finish it by sliding it under those stitches. So I recommend doing that first. The other thing I recommend doing is checking for those missing stitches. There are some missing stitches on this in the section that's already been done, and when I used to teach this at the Royal School of Needlework and we used to do canvas, at the very end they thought, oh, we finished it and great, and I'd be like, right, check it over, and you get your pot of pins and you mark all the missing stitches with a pot of pins, and there was always a couple of missing stitches. So do just check it over and make sure you have filled it all in. So I thought I'd made a decision about what to do with this, but after discussion yesterday I realised I hadn't, and I thought I'd try a bit of stitching and see if I like doing the stitching and I want to finish it. You've seen how long it is at the beginning. It's a really big piece. There's a lot of work in it. It would take a lot of hours, or I can chop it into smaller pieces and make a small one, or I can just work part of it. I still haven't decided, so this might reappear in a Finish It Friday video, and we'll have a look at that and how you can make some of those decisions if you're not sure how to finish something. So do keep an eye out for those. Those are very popular, how to get your projects finished and not end up with a massive pile of unfinished work. So don't forget, if you want to know more about this piece, you can check out this video up here where I got it and all about the history of it. And if you want more details on how to frame up, you can check this one down here. Lots of much more detailed information on how to frame up an embroidery frame like that. Hope you've enjoyed watching this video. Do give it a thumbs up if you have, and I'll see you next time.